I'm Tommy Tran with Dave Richard to give us the fantasy angle of this Christian McCaffrey update. So again, you and I were listening to Kyle Shanahan's press conference, his updates here. What's the biggest takeaway when it comes to Christian McCaffrey?
The biggest takeaway is that he didn't practice on Friday after being limited on Thursday, and he was hurt in practice on Thursday. It's almost a carbon copy of what happened a year ago, Tommy, where McCaffrey was good to go for the week 1 game, and obviously this offseason and this training camp, he practiced a lot. And now he hurt his calf again. At least it's not calf and Achilles on the injury report, but the fact that he was limited on Thursday and it's a fresh injury and he didn't practice on Friday, it does not make me feel good about having Christian McCaffrey on my fantasy team. And we have to mention that the people who took Christian McCaffrey in round 1, they were told by our crew on Fantasy Football Today, you've got to back him up. You know what could happen here. So he's got all the upside in the world. But now I think Brian Robinson and unprompted, Kyle Shanahan mentioned Isaac Guerendo as someone who could be a part of how they operate if Christian McCaffrey can't go against Seattle. Those two guys, Robinson, Guerendo, have to be rostered every single league right now.
Yeah, it's interesting because last year it was Jordan Mason, who's now a Viking, with Guerendo. Then those guys even suffered some injuries here. Robinson's the key because he came over from the Commanders. So the thought is, does he know the playbook? Is he eventually going to be the guy as a handcuff for Christian McCaffrey?
So the way that Kyle Shanahan talked about it on Friday was he knows the game plan for week 1. He doesn't know the whole playbook for the season. And there's going to be a learning process that still goes on with Robinson. And the fact that Guerendo's practice in full makes me think that Guerendo and Robinson will probably split the work. But I might lean toward Guerendo because he's been in this offense for longer. If he's healthy and ready to go, and we know he's a good pass catcher, he might be the one better suited to help the 49ers rather than Robinson, who can work on certain rushing downs, but not necessarily third downs and other passing downs like 2nd and 10, stuff like that.
So Guerendo is part of your week 1 running back waiver wire. So again,
should probably be at the top of this list, not Dylan Sampson.
There you go. He'll be moved up. We'll get that updated again. Also, Brian Robinson rostered, if not already, for a lot of bench fodder for a lot of our fantasy managers. What about Brock Purdy and George Kittle with this news?
So with Brock Purdy and George Kittle, I think fantasy managers know what to do, at least with Kittle. He's a must-start guy, not on the injury report, no injuries with him. Brock Purdy isn't somebody that you have to start in fantasy this week, especially if there's no Christian McCaffrey. That's a weapon that would help Brock Purdy put up numbers. Without him, it's going to be Kittle, it's going to be Ricky Pearsall, who's been an interesting breakout candidate, and it's going to be Jawan Jennings. The one thing that we haven't talked about, by the way, Tommy, is the matchup against Seattle. I think this is a good Seattle defense. I think it's going to be tough on the 49ers to put up a lot of points on the Seahawks.
Okay, before we move on, let me just give you a couple of names like Brock or someone else, because some managers will have 2 quarterbacks on their roster, okay? Purdy or Trevor Lawrence?
Trevor Lawrence.
Purdy or Drake May?
Drake May.
Purdy or Justin Fields?
Purdy over Justin Fields.
Okay, there you go. Dave Richard.
Purdy's kind of a top 15.
I was going to say that, yeah. I was going to say a lot of people have him, and they have a couple of guys that they want to, decide on, and so perhaps the CMC stuff will sway them. Let's get to Miami right now. Good news for fantasy managers and Dolphins fans alike. Devon Achane and Tyreek Hill, who are limited both Wednesday and Thursday. Full participants on Friday, trending to the right direction here in playing this weekend.
And it's great because the Dolphins need all the help that they can get on both sides of the ball, but on offense, absolutely having Tyreek Hill there and Devon Achane there. Look, these are guys that are must-starts in fantasy. We drafted it that way. There's really nothing else to say. The fact that they're not on the injury report going into the game against the Colts is a really good thing. Top 10 type of fantasy running back when it comes to Achane. You see Heath Cummings, #1 running back of the week in full PPR. I would caution Heath and others not to expect the typical workload for Achane in terms of carries. I got to see this team practice a couple of times, and Ollie Gordon, both times in practice, stood out. He's someone that can work in certain running situations, and so maybe that takes a little bit of the lift off of Devon Achane, but obviously in the passing game, Achane a total difference maker. Tyreek Hill against Indianapolis in that secondary that's a little bit underwhelming could absolutely be a #1 fantasy receiver this week.
All right, again, good news for Achane and Hill managers. Let's stay with the receivers and go Malik Neighbors.
He wasn't practicing on Friday because of a back issue, but not on the injury report. Should be good to go. It's not the easiest matchup for him against the Commanders. New quarterback in Russell Wilson, but you drafted Malik Neighbors to be a must-start fantasy receiver. the fact that he's not on the injury report, a very good thing.
Okay. When we talk about waiver wires with the receivers, who are you targeting here week 1?
Well, we know that Christian Kirk isn't going to play for the Texans, so Jaden Higgins is going to be a real popular name. He's not my favorite name on the list, though. Rashid Shaheed is going to be that guy. I think that there's going to be some decent volume in New Orleans for both Chris Olave and Shaheed, and you can see he's available in about half of CBS Sports leagues. But if you can't find him, look for Demario Douglas. That's a PPR receiver. I think he's going to get a lot of volume. We know what the track record is of slot receivers in Josh McDaniels' offense. We know what Keenan Allen is capable of doing, even at his ripe old age, Tommy. We know that he's someone that can get open versus zone coverage, catch a couple of passes. By the time you're watching this, if Friday night's game has already happened, you can't pick him up. But you see other names on this list. Marvin Mims, absolutely somebody who's stashable. Torrey Horton isn't on this list, but Torrey Horton.
We wish. Yeah.
Oh, we'd start Torrey Horton in a second. Torrey Horton is going to be an interesting name in Seattle. He's their downfield receiver, could end up getting a couple of big play targets against those 49ers.
Some people took Darnell Mooney perhaps as a flex option, or at least a good bench option, nearly 1,000 yards last year. Obviously, we know about Drake London. What about Mooney here this week? What do you want to do with him?
He's questionable. It's a game-time decision. He's been battling this shoulder injury basically for the last month, and the fact that he's got a chance to play is a good thing. If he's active, he's no better than a low-end flex. If he's inactive, you can go back to that list that we showed you and pick up Rashid Shaheed, Jaden Higgins, Marvin Mims, obviously in the order that I had it in, which is Shaheed, then Mims, then Jaden Higgins. That would make sense to me.
Yeah, you've got a lot of those guys on this list. By the way,
they're there.
Pop Douglas was there, so is Stephon Diggs. What do we anticipate the Patriots offense and the distribution with Drake May is going to be with those two?
So I think Diggs is going to end up being the #1 target getter on the course of the season. I'm just not sure how many snaps he'll play in week 1. He was real limited in his workload in training camp, but Demario Douglas was not. And he was a favorite target of Drake May at the practice that I was at, and the reports have said the exact same thing. Could be an opportunity for Douglas to see in the neighborhood of 4 to 6 catches. Not necessarily targets, more targets than that, but catches against the Raiders defense.
So we also saw on that list Keon Coleman. So same question in Buffalo in terms of Keon Coleman. Khalil Shakir trending in the right direction against Baltimore.
I wouldn't want to use these guys in week 1, and I am a very big fan of Keon Coleman this year, Tommy. I think he's going to have a big breakout type of season. But the Ravens secondary is good. Their pass rush is good. I wouldn't want to start either of those guys as anything more than #3 receivers, maybe a flex play. In the case of Coleman, I do like Coleman more than Shakir.
And Shakir, a PPR merchant, much more effective
has been
that way, right?
for pretty much his entire career, but I think Coleman's going to end up taking some target share away from everybody in that Buffalo offense.
Same game, we know that 2 tight ends is not outside of the norm with Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, though, but Likely in this game not going to be available.
He's not going to play. Can't even make the unlikely joke for Isaiah Likely. But Mark Andrews, remember last time we saw him? It was against Buffalo.
Yeah, made a
had
bit of a
ball
mistake.
right in his hands for a 2-point conversion, and it fell right to the ground. I bet he rectifies that this week. He's a good start against the Buffalo Bills.
Okay, so we have a consensus ranking of 8. So are you higher or lower on that number?
I'm a little
Mark
higher.
Andrews?
I'm a little higher. I think he's better than Njoku and Laporta. It's easier to say that in non-PPR formats versus full PPR because Andrews doesn't quite get the same type of target volume. But the fact that there's no Likely does open the door for him to see maybe 6, 7 targets from Lamar Jackson.
We talk a lot about the big 3 and then sort of the discussion of whether the rest of the depth of the top 12 plays out, but also the waiver wire. What are some hidden gems that we could potentially focus on?
Let's break this list into 2 parts, Tommy, because
Okay.
I think Brenton Strange, Hunter Henry, Dalton Schultz, those are good streamers for week 1. They're not necessarily tight ends that I'd want to carry on my team moving forward.
Okay.
The tight ends on the bottom of the screen are the ones, they're all rookies, and I think that they all have potential appeal down the line. This is for people in deeper leagues where you've got some extra roster spots to play with. Mason Taylor with the Jets, Fannin with the Browns, Ferguson with the Rams. Even if you don't add them now, keep those 3 names in mind. Put them on your scout team. Write it down on a Post-it note, whatever. You're going to come back around to each of those tight ends at some point in the season.
Short-term and long-term plans with Dave on that front. And then if we had Ferguson on there for the Rams, a lot of the talk with Matthew Stafford, the back, epidurals, all those kinds of things. People were wondering, should I still take Puka Nacua in the first round?
Yeah.
Is Devontae still a wide receiver too? How bullish are you with Stafford given the injury, especially this week out in LA?
As long as he's healthy and upright, I'm a big fan of Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. And even if he's not, I'm still going to be into Nacua and Adams, but I think you would downgrade expectations a little bit with Jimmy Garoppolo under center. But let's not even bring up his name because Stafford's going to play.
Yeah.
And I think it does kick down the door for both Rams receivers to get a lot of work. I think there could be a little bit of importance on getting the ball out fast for Matthew Stafford. So that'll hurt downfield targets for both Nakua and Devontae Adams, but it doesn't mean they can't win on routes inside of 15 yards. And that's why I would expect both of them to get a lot of targets. We could talk double-digit targets for both of them, and good fantasy numbers for each of them as well. So Stafford's healthy. Try and keep that pass rush off of him. The offensive line's healthy for the Rams. How long did it take last year for us to be able to say that this year, the starting five ready to go? I think that that's a very good thing. Both wide receivers should be in fantasy lineups.
Back-to-back 10-7 seasons for the Rams. Again, remember, they gave the Eagles their toughest test in going to the Super Bowl and winning the Super Bowl in the NFC postseason. And then there's the Week 1 waiver wire, which we played fun a little bit with the 12-16 guys. What are we doing with this list?
I think this is a list you look at if you want to be contrarian in DFS, because Tua Tagovailoa, Joe Flacco, Michael Penix, I don't want to start these guys in 1 QB leagues. I'll start all 3 in 2 QB leagues, Superflex leagues. And in DFS, I'm not sure how popular they'll be. You see Flacco available in 89% of CBS Sports leagues. Nobody wants to start him. But that's the type of play that you want to make in a DFS tournament to make your lineup different from everybody else's.
For Flacco, could be the start of his second comeback player of the year campaign. Maybe not like as good as 2023, but we'll see in 25. Dave, certainly appreciate it. Thanks for the updates and the insight, of course, from a fantasy perspective. A lot more of that on FFT. Scan the QR code. Hopefully you've had your draft done already because we had Thursday Night Football. But again, all this great information at your fingertips and also on YouTube.